It finally happened. Dylan Raiola, whose name I had been mispronouncing for far too long, 5-star quarterback, he flipped from Georgia to Alabama? No. Florida? No. Ohio State? No. Flipped to Nebraska. Matt Rule just rung the bell. He flipped to Nebraska. Oh, by the way, Dylan Raiola flips from Georgia to Nebraska in the form of a poem that he allegedly wrote himself and released on the socials. And as they say in this town, that ain't the way Hank did it. As I say, that ain't the way Meemaw did it. But I digress. To each his own. Thought it was a C-plus poem, but it's an A-plus landing for Nebraska. Now, two things can be very true here. The first is, this is monumental. I mean, this is one of the biggest things to happen in Lincoln, Nebraska in quite a while as it relates to athletics. The other thing that could be true is Georgia will be just fine after this. And this may not be the time for it, but there is coming a day where I need to have myself a nice little commentary on what schools choose to do in the form of NIL versus what they technically have the capability to do. That's for another day, because I want to celebrate Nebraska for just a second here. I have, as usual, a bunch of detractors, probably the same folks who think there are too many bowl games this time of year, who as soon as a kid makes a decision, their first thought is, what if he's a bust? Well, what if he's a bust? You want to go down that road? I'll go down that road. What if Dylan Raiola is a bust? Well, what if he never throws a touchdown pass? Now, that would be extreme. But what if he isn't? I don't know. I think the sun will continue to rise there. Let's be more realistic. What if he's just an average player? What's the expectation for him at Nebraska? Are we talking about savior of program? Matt Rule equals Tom Osborne 2.0? Like, are we talking about that kind of expectation? That's not my expectation. I'm going to be a little more reasonable. I just want him to be the quarterback that starts for a team that becomes a respectable contender in the Big Ten. That's a little bit more modest, I know, than some of you guys in Big Red Country are thinking. That's fine. I want you to have big expectations. That's great. I want to be reasonable about it so that percentage-wise, I have a better chance of coming back later when he fulfills exactly what I expected, and I can shoot back at other folks who falsely inflated expectations and say, maybe that was the problem. Maybe that expectation inflation was the problem. Colin, we're going to use that. Expectation inflation. I think he'll be okay there. Look, I watched him throw at Elite 11 just like the rest of our staff did. I thought he was a tinge overrated at the time, but he was the number one quarterback in the country, so he can be overrated and still be one of the best players in the class. Give him a little time, and I think he'll be fine. The second part of this, and the reason I'm bringing this up in what seems like a little bit of a negative light, is I want to go worst case scenario intentionally. Let's say he's average at best. This isn't just about landing a quarterback. Okay, at Georgia, he was a quarterback. Georgia doesn't have to worry about messaging. Georgia's not trying to rebuild anything. Nebraska is. From near the ground up, they're trying to rebuild something. This is as much about messaging as it is anything else. Do you know what it means to 95% of the college football public who doesn't follow this stuff as hardcore as you and I do, to see a kid flip from Georgia to Nebraska at this position? You know what that means? You know what it means for Matt Rule? No matter what the mechanisms were behind the scenes. Again, 95% of the public is ignorant of that. Do you know what it means for Matt Rule to be able to say, me, 1, Kirby Smart, 0? Because that's what it looks like. That's not exactly what it was, but that's what it looks like. And messaging is everything here. This is essentially marketing as well as talent acquisition for Nebraska. It was just one of those things for Georgia. It's just talent acquisition, bottom line business for them. That block G resonates coast to coast. Well, that N has not meant what it used to mean in a long time, coast to coast. I can walk into Minneapolis International Airport wearing that G on my chest, and folks who don't even watch football know what it is. And even if they don't, they know more than just University of Georgia. They know University of Georgia, pretty good in football too, even though I don't watch. Dude, folks don't think that about Nebraska right now. And if you're under 40 years old, you have no awareness that they ever were anything in football. That's the truth. So any kind of messaging win, any kind of promotional win that you can get for your program, whether it comes with a 5-star quarterback attached to it or not, is a big day for you. Now, let me say this about Georgia. Okay, so the reason I said they'll be fine is, number one, Kirby Smart's running the program. Should be the end of the segment. But let me add this. When we were out at Elite 11, I got to talk with every one of these kids. I got to watch every one of them throw, standing 10 yards away from them. Raiola has the ball jump out of his hands. It's very obvious. He's got legs thicker than most guys that you would see at that level or beyond. He's just built a little bit different. Physically, he's a one-percenter. They've got another kid committed named Ryan Puglisi. I also watched him, also spoke with him. I don't think that kid will take a back seat to many people. I know he's got 4 stars next to his name, and Raiola's got 5 stars. That's okay. That's well and good. Okay, we've seen a million case studies on this where 4 stars go on to be drafted in the first round. A 4 star is not a negative, by the way. Puglisi's just a little bit different cat. You ever grow up with, I'll give you an example all of you can relate to. I'm not a big NBA guy, but one of the most impressive things I ever saw in an NBA game is when Kobe Bryant was guarding the baseline, and I can't even remember who it was, but that dude started to inbound the ball, and he goes in Kobe's face real quick with it, and Kobe doesn't even move. Matt Barnes. And Kobe doesn't even move. That's like alien DNA. Humans are not wired like that. Puglisi's that kind of guy. I don't think that you'd get much reaction or flinch out of him if you put a ball in his face like that. Very cerebral, could take or leave the process, wasn't about the spotlight. Just a guy who I trust in big moments. I trust him in big moments. Mechanically, may be better than Raiola. So I was talking to a couple of quarterback coaches yesterday about him. I told them what I thought, and they echoed it like they've got a winner. They had 2 of them probably in this class. And now it just sorted itself out. And you know what? If I was that kid, you know what I'd tell myself? I'd tell myself, they didn't want any part of me. And by them, I mean anyone trying to compete. They didn't want any part of me. And you know what? Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. Whatever you got to tell yourself to get yourself ready to compete. Georgia will be just fine. If that's the quarterback of your future will be just fine. And so will Nebraska's. See what I did there? It wasn't a winner-loser segment. It was just winner-winner. But I'm not going to say chicken dinner.